G'day everyone, welcome all to Guvs Hero Review video for the legendary green hero, Crypt, the Cursed Ninja. So Crypt has freshly been added to PuzzleCombat as the featured hero of the month for July 2023, during which time he is available as the bonus draw of any hero summon that you perform throughout the month. However, after July finishes up, Crypt will only be available via the Manor of Legends portal, which rolls around once every 4 weeks, but that will only be starting in 9 months' time, so not until, I don't know, what is it, May? March? Something like that in 2024. Long time away, 9 months after his initial release date. By way of an odd summary, so obviously when he's the featured hero of the month, we'll just open up a random portal. We can see there is the legendary hero of the month as the bonus draw. That comes in as a 1% chance for those that bonus draw. So if you were to do 100 summons across the entire month across any of the different portals, you would have a 63.4% probability of gaining a copy of Crypt. In the Manor of Legends portal, however, it does have some different odds. It comes in with a 1% chance for the featured hero and a 0.9% chance for one of the many unfeatured heroes. So in this portal, if you were to do 100 summons, you would have a 63.4% probability of gaining either of the 2 featured heroes of the month and a 59.5% probability of getting one of the unfeatured heroes of the month. Now, those odds do drop off further when you are targeting a specific hero, such as Crypt, for example. So if you are going after him specifically when he is featured, it is just a 39.4% probability of getting him on those 100 summons. But if he is one of the unfeatured heroes, there is just a 2.0% probability of getting him as an unfeatured hero. So that last number as well is going to diminish even further as more heroes are added to that portal in the future. Let's just jump across and we can take a quick look at his artwork real quick. So here we have Crypt's artwork. So he is titled the Cursed Ninja. So we've got kind of those ancient Egypt mummy vibes going on with the cloth wrapping, as well as the sort of sarcophagi-esque pads on his knees, like the mask that they have on the sarcophagus. And we've also got the Attk symbol dangling from a belt loop there as well, which weirdly enough is the symbol for life, which is odd on an undead hero. But anyway, who cares about those sort of intricacy or conflicts? But yeah, that's his artwork. So thank you very much to Pooflinger and X-Inspire for passing this one along. I do also have a special little treat, which is his animation. So we'll just have a quick look at that. Thank you, X, for passing this one along. So you can see that's his artwork, or his animation rather. So yeah, thanks X for passing that along. He has sort of that Nile, it's the sound that's used in so many videos and movies, that Nile style harp with the do whatever it is, as well as obviously that Attk symbol once again. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got on his artwork and stuff. So yeah, let's jump back across and we can take a bit more of a look at the rest of his card. So he is obviously a hero of the month, which means that he doesn't have a family bonus. Normally there'd be something shown on the left hand side here. Yeah, unfortunately, STG have not bothered adding anything for the past Heroes of the Month or any of the Heroes of the Month like they have in Empires and Puzzles. Maybe they'll add something down the track. I doubt it at this stage. So, yeah, we'll just have to keep an eye out for it. But at the time of this review, there is just no family bonus for them. So, on his personal side of things, he comes in with 819 attack, 719 defense, and 1,405 HP. So there is a bit of a skew going on there. Mostly it's going from that defense stat across to the attack stat, and there is a little bit off his HP stat as well going towards that attack stat, but it is relatively minor. There's not actually a huge amount of skew going on in terms of the defense, but most of it is coming from that HP stat going across to his attack. It is worth pointing out as well, his team power, or his overall power, is a little bit lower compared to some of the best ones in the game. So you've got 734 is his power. Topaz is probably the highest at the moment at 742. But in saying that, Crypt 734 is very much a massive improvement beyond some of the OG heroes of the month that are in like the 680s to 700 range of power. So all the power means is it's a representation of their base stats. So more power means they've got more base stats to distribute across the three statistics there. So he is not as good as some of the best ones like Topaz in the Season 2s, but he's also a far sight better than some of the older options that are in the game as well. His charge speed is set to 62, which is fast speed and requires 9 tiles to charge, or 5 ghosted tiles. The speed break does happen at speed 65, which will drop him down to 8 tiles, so that's a +3 improvement. Now, Green only has one speed gun in the entire game, which is the +6 Relic Hunter Bargo. Fortunately, +6 is greater than +3, so therefore you get the speed break. It is also worth pointing out that the charge node that happens at +20 on his emblem tree, it is a 4% improvement, and it is actually sufficient to get you that single break. So the 4% charge generation node will do that single break and get you across the line there. A double break, though, on the other hand, is not actually possible. So you can't get from 9 tiles down to 7. That would require getting up to speed 72. So even combining the +6 gun with the 4% speed improvement, it's not enough. It lands you a bit short. So yeah, the charge node is relevant, I guess, if you want to get that single break but don't have or aren't wanting to use a speed gun on him. But the flip side of that is it is a long way down his tree. Being 4%, it happens at +20 on his tree. So just something to bear in mind. On the topic of his class, while we're there, Crypt is a member of the Spy class, which it grants him the chance to scramble the charge of the enemy by -10% whenever he does damage. So the damage itself, it can be from any source, right? It can be from tiles, skills, slash attacks, minions that he sit on his card. Any of those things have the chance to proc that Spy talent and result in a charge cut. Generally, I do like this perk. It is fairly impactful. The damage, as I said, can come from anywhere. It can come in clutch and just stop enemy heroes from being able to have that last little tick of their damage, of their charge rather, and deal the damage out. The big downside is ultimately, though, that it can only proc, I believe, once a turn, but I'm not 100% on that one. Actually, we can go and check that. So we'll jump across to my roster and we can take a look at a Spy class hero and just see what it says. Talent. Yeah, so it's after dealing damage, so it's not actually limited to a single instance in a turn. Anyway, that's all good. By way of a talent tree, I would probably follow something similar to what I've done here on Manor. I would personally be going an attack path to just enhance his damage output, grant him more and more damage, and really just accentuate that big attack stat that he already has. So obviously my Manor, I've stopped at +15 at the moment. So what this would look like, if you were to follow it the whole way down, we are just picking up each node that's got attack on it. Whether you choose between the side that's got defense or the side that's got HP, like we see here on branch 2, is really a bit of a dealer's choice. There's not really a right or a wrong answer to it. They both end up having roughly the same impact in terms of survival. So I personally, I tend to favor defense is my personal one, because that means that things like armor and also like minions, they actually get a greater benefit out of their artificial HP they put on you, because you take less damage or marginally less damage in the scheme of things. So I tend towards the defense stat, but it's a dealer's choice. It doesn't really make much of a difference. So continuing down the tree, we can see we are picking up the attack nodes. And then, as I said, going to +19 and +20 is of situational benefit. +20 is +19 is justifiable because it is a fairly large attack improvement coming in at 3%. And +20, I would say it's only relevant if you plan to not use the Relic Hunter Bargo on him. If you do plan to use that weapon on Crypt, there is absolutely no reason that you should go to +20, like no reason at all. So yeah, I personally, I've got Relic Hunter Bargo, so I wouldn't be getting the +20 node. I would be stopping much short of that. And in all honesty, personally, I'd probably be stopping at +15, just to use my Spy emblems on some other heroes as well. But you can definitely go down to +19 and pick up that extra attack node as well. So that's the path that I would follow. for Crypt following that attack path. So feel free to pause it, screenshot if you wish, but otherwise, let's jump back across to the portal and we can take a look at the rest of his skill. So his skill itself is titled Blood Drain, and at level 10 skill and 62 charge speed, it will deal 285% damage to the target and nearby enemies, and then apply a bleed ailment to the target and nearby enemies, dealing 309 HP damage over 3 turns, and finally, it will then steal 50% of any healing that is applied to the target and nearby enemies for the next 3 turns. So a couple little interesting things going on there. We'll break it down section by section as always, but we are going to start with his direct damage as we always do. So direct damage is relatively easy to calculate in the game. It follows a fairly simple formula. However, there is a lot of variability in that calculation. So for the simplicity that it brings, I tend to compare heroes based on their attack power, which ultimately is an analogous to their damage output anyway. More attack power means more damage. So attack power is just their attack stat, 819, multiplied by the percentage in his skill to 85%. And in the case of Crypt, we can see that he comes out with an attack power of 2,334, which it's not huge as an attack power. It's actually kind of in the middle of the pack compared to some of the better options that there are. Where Crypt really picks up a lot is on his speed. So he does come in with a relatively fast speed, coming in at 9 tiles to charge. So on that speed normalized APPT, attack power per tile, we see he comes in at number 2 of the 14 green DOA 3 hitters. So he does actually land in pretty good standing in terms of the DOA 3 hitters. If we were to expand that list out and have a look at all the different options in the game, he still lands pretty well. He comes out as number 4 of the 60 DOA 3 hitters in the game across all of the 5-star ones. So number 4 is not bad. 4 out of 60. Like, it's in probably the top, it's definitely the top 10%. It's just outside the top 5% of all the DOA 3 hitters in the game across the 5-star arena. So yeah, ultimately, the short of it is that he actually has some quite good damage. Admittedly, his without it being speed normalized, he does drop off a bit. You know, you can see Variant Hairwear there comes in at 2814 for his attack power, but because of his speed, Variant Hairwear does drop off down a little bit, like lower in the speed normalized section. So yeah, very good healer, damage dealer Crypt is. So well worth looking at him for that damage output aspect on its own. If we move on from the damage and have a look at the next part of his skill, which is the bleed ailment, so it states that bleed, the target and nearby enemies receive 309 damage over 3 turns. So 309 over 3 turns, it's a fairly standard quantity for 5-star heroes. We see it consistently on Burn, Poison, and a lot of other bleed heroes. So that is fairly in line with what we expect. Bleed does have a lot of really good options in the game, but a lot of them actually, bleed's a little bit weird, where there's not many that are 309. A lot of them sort of sit at lower forms, but have like damage reset counters and that kind of thing. So, but generally speaking, 309 over 3 turns is the norm for DOT on 5-star heroes. Comes out as being 103 damage per turn, so pretty standard. There's not a huge amount else that I really need to say about the bleed ailment. Obviously, it's an ailment, so that means that it can be withstood, cleansed, resisted, reflected, all of that stuff. If it is reflected, it does mean that the bleed applies to him, Crypt, instead of the enemy heroes. Obviously, the cleanse is the biggest one, so you obviously need the effect to stay on the enemy in order to trigger the additional damage. It is also a turn-based effect, so it can be enhanced by heroes like Whipstar or Torrent as 2 different examples, and it can also be dampened by heroes like the zombies, and it can also be switched into healing, like we see on Variant Pika or the Mutant family. So being turn-based damage, that's all possible. Yeah, not really much else to say about Bleed. Actually, one final thing is that because it is Bleed, it will trigger the Bleed Burst effect on heroes like Ikwani or Hatchet. So Ikwani is a pretty good combination that you can make with Crypt here. So Crypt puts Bleed out on 3 enemies. Ikwani will trigger a massive Bleed Burst and deal 530 odd damage or something like that immediately from that Bleed Burst. So very, very good effect. And a great combination there, particularly if you like wait 1 or 2 turns to get most of Crypt's benefit from his bleed before triggering that bleed burst. Yeah, cool. All right, moving on from the bleed, and we'll take a look at the final part of his skill, which is the healing steal. So the caster steals 50% of any healing applied to the target and nearby enemies for 3 turns. So this is kind of a vampire effect, really. So any direct healing or healing over time that is normally going to apply to the afflicted enemies. Instead, they're only going to get 50% of it. The other 50% comes to Crypt instead. So if we take Pulse, Pulse will normally do 420 HP heal to all of her allies. Any of her allies, though, that are afflicted by Crypt's healing steal, they'll only get 50 of it. So instead of getting 420, they'll get 210, and the remaining 210 will go to Crypt. And that is on a per instance basis. So if Crypt has it affecting 3 enemies, Crypt will get 3 instances of 210 HP. So he'll get essentially a 630 HP heal. So yeah, it's a pretty good effect. It is ailment linked, so obviously he misses it. They withstand, resist, cleanse, all of those things. Then they obviously then don't lose out on the healing, and similarly, Crypt doesn't get that healing. But it will affect all forms of healing. It'll do direct heal, heal over time, heal from things like minions, or even the field aid war buff. All of those constitute as quote-unquote healing, and they will instead be giving healing to Crypt. It doesn't actually apply to pseudo healing, so it does not affect armor, and it does not affect minions. And obviously, revived heroes are dead, so they have no ailments, so he can't steal the revival HP from those heroes as well. So yeah, the other thing that I really want to note, and it's a real bit of a downer to Crypt, probably the only big downside to him, is that he only does the healing steal to himself. There is absolutely no benefit to any of his allies. So if he steals 610 HP, there's no benefit to his allies at all. It just all goes to his HP bar. And if he's already at full health, then there's the only benefit to it is that the enemy don't get it. So overall, I think Crypt is a bit of an uppy-downy hero, right? His damage output is really great when you look at his damage and his speed and normalize it like that. The bleed is really nice as well. It further enhances his net damage output. Particularly, I like that it is a standard DOT quantity. It's that 309, which we don't typically see for bleed ailments. But where he kind of falls off is just that healing steal at the end. It's an okay effect. It is somewhat limited. But I think for me, where I sort of get a bit of a down for Crypt is that I just can't help but compare him to Whack, right? Both of them are fast speed DOA 3 hitters, right? Both of them can be speed broken to 8 tiles, but when you look at the total balance, Crypt just falls short of where Whack lands. You know, both in terms of his direct damage, we saw before that Whack actually ends up with a higher direct damage, but also in the family bonus, Whack's got a really great family bonus, Crypt has nothing. But then there's also just all the secondary effects. You know, Whack has got 2 ways to enhance his damage output via the defense down as well as the strong damage improvement. But Crypt, by the flip side, he's got the bleed and this vampire style healing steal. And I mean, Whack as well has the dispel. So, I mean, it's probably unfair to Crypt, really, because he is a solid hero. He's got a lot of uses in raid arenas due to his speed and the damage output, and that healing steal has a lot of war uses in the field aid buff, as well as generally controlling enemy healers. But on the balance, if you had the 2 of them, I just feel Whack sours Crypt a little bit with that comparison. But not saying that Crypt is not a good hero. Like, he is still a very good hero, which we'll see in his grading. So for Crypt's grading, I'm going to give him an A- for war and raid attacks, right? He does still have some really great damage. He's got some really good bleed, and he's got a lot of uses in that sort of thing. He falls a little bit short compared to Whack, but he is still a really good attacking hero. So an A- for his overall, for his raid and war attacks. On the war machines, I'm going to knock him down to a B grade. There's nothing really in his skill that would lend him to being a war machine hero beyond his attack stat, ultimately. And similarly for the venting, I'm going to give him a B+, because again, he's got AoE 3 damage, and it is pretty decent AoE 3 damage, but there's nothing else that really would make him a quality event hero, so to speak. On the defense side of things, for war and raid defenses, I'm going to give him a B grade. You could argue a B+, but I'm going to keep him at a B grade. He's got good damage, he's got good speed, he's got the bleed, and all of that. So I'd probably say his best position would be the flank. would be, I would say, his best spot, but he can also very much function in the wing because he's not really got any AoE 3 ally effects. I just sort of put him at the flank because he's, in order to probably charge 2 or 3 times in a battle before being wiped out. On the tournament side of things, so Bloody Battle, obviously this is where there is no healing, so he does sort of lose out a little bit because he loses the vampire effect, but on the flip side of it as well, under the Bloody Battle rule set, there's no healing permitted. So most of the cleansers in the game are linked to healers. So in that regard, he does go a little bit up because DOT generally becomes more powerful in the Bloody Battle tournament setting. So I'm going to keep him at an A- for his Bloody Battle attack grade, and I'm going to give him a B grade for his Bloody Battle defense. On the buff boosters, there's nothing here which makes him a buff booster, so I'm going to knock him down to a B+ on attack and a B- on defense. And similarly, on the charge tournament, there's no real speed improvement because Green doesn't actually get a speed break under the charge attack tournament rule set. So they can't, so for him, he's already functionally the same speed hero. He already breaks down into that 65 speed bracket. So he goes up from 62 to 65, but he can't get out of the 65 bracket because there's only a +6 speed gun and you need +7. So for the charge attack tournaments, I'm going to give him a B+ for the attack side of things and a B grade for the defense. So overall, that comes out as being a B+ for his overall attack grade and a B for his overall defense grade. And that about concludes the content that I have for this review of Crypt. As always, these are just my personal views on these heroes. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback on them, so please do jump down to the comments section of the video, leave me a note. I try to read and respond as much as possible. If you did find the video to be good, useful, helpful and everything, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel and that, but definitely also share the video around, because chances are if this is useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to the people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope that I will see you again soon in another vid, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!